The story of how my mother-in-law derailed my wedding to my husband. Weddings are supposed to be a celebration of love, a day when two people come together to start their lives as one. But for me, it became the battleground for a war I never wanted to fight. A war with my future mother-in-law, Claudia. From the moment I got engaged to Derek, I knew his mother would be a challenge. Claudia was a force of nature, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and immediately take control, whether it was wanted or not. At first, I admired her strength and confidence, but as the wedding planning began, it quickly became clear that her desire for control went far beyond anything I had anticipated. Derek had always seemed like a strong, independent man to me. He was kind, thoughtful, and full of life, exactly the kind of partner I had always dreamed of. But something strange happened whenever Claudia was around. It was as if she had a spell over him, turning him into a nervous, stammering mess. I had never seen anything like it. The first time I witnessed it, I was shocked. We were having dinner with Claudia at her home, and everything seemed fine until she started nitpicking at Derek for not calling her earlier in the week. The confident man I knew suddenly shrank before my eyes, stumbling over his words as he tried to apologize. It was as if he was a child again, being scolded by his mother. I kept quiet, thinking it was just a one-time thing. Maybe he was tired, or maybe it was just a rough day. But it happened again and again, each time more unsettling than the last. Claudia's tone was often condescending, and her demands were sometimes so absurd that I couldn't believe Derek went along with them. At first, I tried to stay out of it. I told myself that this was between Derek and his mother, and that I should respect their relationship. But as time went on, I found it harder and harder to bite my tongue. The breaking point came one evening when we were discussing the guest list for the wedding. Claudia insisted on inviting an old friend of hers, someone I had never met and had no desire to include. It was already difficult enough to trim my side of the guest list to fit our budget, and I wasn't about to add strangers just to please her. But Claudia was adamant. "She's a dear friend, and it would mean so much to me if she could attend," Claudia said with a sugary smile that barely concealed the iron will beneath. I looked at Derek, expecting him to support me, but he just shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Maybe we could find a way to make it work," he suggested weakly. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Derek, we've already cut so many people from our side. We can't keep adding guests." "But it's just one more," Claudia chimed in, her voice smooth but with an edge that told me she wasn't really asking. I felt my frustration boiling over. "I'm sorry, but we simply can't afford to add anyone else. We've already made too many sacrifices." Claudia's smile faltered, and for a moment I thought she might back down. But then she narrowed her eyes and said, "Well, if you can't find room for one more, maybe we should postpone the wedding. My friend can't make it until the end of the quarter anyway. It would be more convenient for everyone." The room fell silent. I stared at her in disbelief. Postpone the wedding for a friend I'd never met. It was outrageous. "Derek!" I looked at him, hoping he would stand up for us, for our wedding, but he just sat there, frozen. Finally, I couldn't hold back any longer. "I'm sorry, but that's not happening. We've already planned everything, and we're not postponing it for a guest we don't even know. This is our wedding, not a social event for your friends." Claudia's eyes flashed with anger, but before she could respond, Derek spoke up, though his voice was weak and unconvincing. "Mum, maybe we could—" "No, Derek," I interrupted, turning to face him fully. "We're not postponing our wedding for this." Claudia stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "Well, I can see where I stand," she said coldly. "If my opinions aren't valued here, then maybe I should just remove myself from the planning altogether." And with that, she stormed out of the room. After Claudia's dramatic exit, Derek and I sat in stunned silence. I had hoped that my firm stance would finally make him realize that we needed to be a team, that he needed to stand up to his mother. But instead, he seemed more conflicted than ever. You didn't have to be so harsh, he said quietly. Harsh? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Derek, she wanted us to postpone our wedding because it was more convenient for her friend. How is that reasonable? I know, he mumbled, rubbing the back of his neck. But she's my mum. She's always been like this. I don't know how to say no to her. Well, you're going to have to learn, I said firmly. We can't start our marriage with her dictating everything. We need to set boundaries. Derek nodded, but I could tell he was still struggling with the idea. As much as he loved me, his loyalty to his mother was deeply ingrained. I realized then that this wasn't going to be an easy battle. It was going to be a quiet war, one fought with subtle digs and passive-aggressive comments rather than open confrontation. Over the next few weeks, Claudia made it clear that she was not happy with me. She stopped coming to our planning meetings, and when she did, she barely spoke to me, addressing all her comments and suggestions to Derek instead. It was as if I didn't exist in her eyes. But that didn't mean she wasn't pulling the strings behind the scenes. She would call Derek late at night, whispering her concerns and complaints, planting seeds of doubt in his mind. He would come to me the next day, trying to gently suggest changes that I knew had come straight from Claudia's mouth. It was exhausting. I felt like I was constantly fighting a battle on two fronts, trying to plan the wedding of my dreams while also fending off Claudia's attempts to undermine me. And through it all, Derek remained caught in the middle, unable to fully commit to either side. The final straw came when Claudia insisted on choosing the wedding flowers. She had always had a thing for orchids, and apparently nothing else would do, but I had my heart set on roses, simple, classic, and a perfect match for the rest of our decor. Derek, I want roses, I said one evening as we discussed the final details. They're beautiful, and they've always been my favourite. I know, but Mum really loves orchids, he replied, shifting uncomfortably. And she's offered to pay for them. Maybe we could compromise? Compromise, I repeated, incredulous. Derek, this is our wedding. It's not about what your mother wants. It's about what we want. But she's paying for them, he pointed out weakly. She's only paying for them because she knows I don't want them, I snapped, my patience wearing thin. This isn't about flowers, Derek. It's about her trying to control everything. Derek sighed, clearly torn. I just don't want to upset her. She's already so stressed about the wedding. And what about me? I asked, my voice trembling with frustration. I'm your fiancé, Derek. I'm supposed to be the most important person in your life, but it feels like I'm always coming second to her. He looked at me, guilt written all over his face. You're not second, he said softly. I love you and I want to marry you, but she's my mum. I felt a surge of anger and sadness. I'm not asking you to choose between us. I'm asking you to stand up for us, for our wedding, for our future. If you can't do that now, what's going to happen after we're married? Is she going to make all the decisions for us? Derek didn't have an answer, and that silence spoke louder than any words ever could. As the wedding date approached, I found myself growing more and more anxious. I had always dreamed of a beautiful, joyful wedding day, but instead it felt like I was walking into a battlefield. Claudia's presence loomed over everything, and I could feel the tension between us growing with each passing day. But just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, something unexpected happened. I found allies in the most unlikely places. The first was Derek's sister, Fiona. She was a few years older than Derek, and while we had always been friendly, we had never been particularly close. Fiona had always seemed a bit aloof, more interested in her own life and career than in family drama. But one afternoon, she invited me out for coffee, and I was surprised to find that she wanted to talk about Claudia. I've been watching what's going on with you and Mom, Fiona said, her tone sympathetic, and I just want you to know that I'm on your side. I blinked in surprise. You are? Fiona nodded. Believe me, I know what it's like to deal with her. She's been trying to control Derek for years. It's like she thinks he's still a little boy who can't make his own decisions. Exactly, I exclaimed, relieved to finally have someone who understood. It's like she's trying to undermine everything I do, and Derek, he just doesn't see it. Fiona sighed, stirring her coffee absently. Derek's always been the one she's babied. It's not that he doesn't see it, he just doesn't know how to stand up to her. She's always had this hold over him, and it's hard for him to break free. But what am I supposed to do? I asked, feeling a bit hopeless. I love Derek, but I can't spend the rest of my life fighting with his mother. You shouldn't have to, Fiona said firmly. Look, if you want my advice, I think you need to sit Derek down and have a serious talk with him. Not about the wedding, but about your future. He needs to understand that this isn't just about making his mom happy. It's about the kind of life you're going to have together. I nodded, feeling a bit more hopeful. Thank you, Fiona. It means a lot to have your support. Of course, she said with a smile. And if you need any help dealing with Mum, just let me know. I've got a few tricks up my sleeve. The second ally came in the form of my own mother, who had been relatively quiet during all the wedding drama. My mum had always been the kind of person who believed in letting people handle their own problems, but when she saw how much stress I was under, she decided to step in. One evening, after a particularly frustrating phone call with Claudia, my mum sat me down for a heart-to-heart. Sweetheart, I can see how much this is weighing on you, she said gently, and I just want you to know that you don't have to go through this alone. Your father and I are here for you, no matter what. Thanks, Mom, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I don't know what to do. I love Derek, but his mother is making everything so difficult. I feel like I'm losing control of my own wedding. My mum nodded thoughtfully. I've seen women like Claudia before. She's used to getting her way, and she doesn't like it when someone challenges her. But you're stronger than you think, and you're not alone in this. I just wish Derek would stand up to her, I admitted. It feels like I'm the only one fighting back. Have you talked to him about it? She asked. I've tried, but he's so torn between us. I don't want to make him choose, but I also don't want to be bulldozed by his mother for the rest of my life. My mom smiled kindly. You're right, you shouldn't have to make him choose. But you do need to make it clear to him that this is about your future together. If he truly loves you, he'll understand that he needs to put you first. I hope so, I said, feeling a mix of hope and doubt. You'll get through this, my mum said, squeezing my hand. And when you do, you'll be stronger for it. And don't forget, you've got a whole family behind you, ready to support you every step of the way. With the support of Fiona and my mother, I felt a renewed sense of determination. This was my wedding, my future, and I wasn't going to let Claudia ruin it. The week before the wedding, tensions were at an all-time high. Claudia had finally agreed to back off, but her presence still loomed over everything. I could tell that Derek was feeling the strain as well. He was quieter than usual, and there was a tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. One evening, after another long day of wedding preparations, I decided it was time to have the talk that Fiona and my mum had both suggested. Derek and I sat down in the living room, and I took a deep breath before speaking. Derek, we need to talk about your mum. He looked at me, clearly bracing himself for another argument. What about her? This isn't about the wedding, I began, choosing my words carefully. This is about us, about our future. I love you, Derek, but I can't keep fighting with your mum like this. It's not healthy, and it's not fair to either of us. He sighed, rubbing his temples. I know. I'm sorry. I've just been trying to keep everyone happy. But that's the problem, I said gently. You can't keep everyone happy, especially not your mum. She's used to getting her way, and when she doesn't, she lashes out. But Derek, you're not a child anymore. You're a grown man, and soon you're going to be my husband. We need to be a team. I know, he said again, his voice full of guilt. It's just hard. She's always been like this, and I guess I'm just used to it. But you don't have to be, I said, reaching out to take his hand. You have a choice. You can stand up for us for our future, or you can keep letting her control everything. But if you choose the latter, I don't know how we can make this work. The room fell silent as Derek processed my words. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the struggle between his loyalty to his mother and his love for me. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. "You're right," he said quietly. "I've been letting her control too much, and I'm sorry, I should have stood up for us sooner." Relief washed over me, but I wasn't done yet. "There's something else I need to tell you," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "Your sister Fiona and my mum, they're on our side. They've seen what your mum's been doing and they've offered to help." Derek looked surprised. "Fiona? Really?" I nodded. "She's been through this with your mum before, and she understands what we're dealing with. And my mum, well, she's a lot stronger than she looks. We don't have to do this alone." Derek let out a deep breath, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "Okay," he said, finally meeting my eyes. "Let's do this together." With Derek finally on board, the final showdown with Claudia was inevitable. We decided to confront her together, with Fiona and my mum by our side for support. When we arrived at Claudia's house, I could tell she was expecting something. She greeted us with a forced smile, but I could see the suspicion in her eyes. "Derek, darling," she said sweetly, "what brings you here?" "We need to talk, Mum," Derek said, his voice steady, "about the wedding and about our future." Claudia's smile faltered. "What do you mean?" "We've decided that we're going to make our own decisions from now on," he continued. "We love you, and we want you to be a part of our lives, but we need to set some boundaries. We can't keep letting you control everything." Claudia's eyes narrowed. "Boundaries? What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the wedding and how you've been trying to dictate everything, from the guest list to the flowers," Derek said, his voice growing stronger. "This is our day, and it's important that it reflects what we want, not what you want." Claudia's face turned red, and I could see the anger building. "I'm only trying to help. You're making a mistake, Derek. You're letting her—" "No, Mom," Derek interrupted firmly. "I'm not letting anyone do anything. This is my decision, and it's time you respected it." The room was tense as Claudia processed his words. For a moment, I thought she might explode, but then something unexpected happened. Her shoulders slumped, and she looked defeated. "I just wanted what's best for you," she said quietly, her voice lacking its usual sharpness. "I know," Derek said softly, "but what's best for me is to start my own life, with my wife. I need you to support us, not control us." Claudia didn't respond immediately, but I could see the gears turning in her mind. Finally, she let out a heavy sigh. "I suppose I've been overstepping." "Just a bit," Fiona chimed in with a smirk. Claudia shot her a look, but there was no real malice in it. "Fine," she said with a resigned tone. "I'll back off, but don't come crying to me if things don't go as planned." "We won't," Derek said with a small smile. "Thank you, Mom." And just like that, the war was over. The day of the wedding arrived, and to my relief, everything went smoothly. Claudia kept her promise to back off, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could finally breathe. The flowers were roses, just as I had wanted, and the guest list was exactly as we had planned. As I walked down the aisle toward Derek, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. We had faced so many challenges, so many obstacles, but we had come out stronger on the other side. And when I reached Derek, the look in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. We were a team now, and nothing could come between us. The ceremony was beautiful, and the reception was full of laughter, love, and joy. Even Claudia seemed to be enjoying herself, though I could tell she was still adjusting to her new role in our lives. But that was okay. We all had some growing to do. As the night drew to a close, Derek and I found a quiet moment alone. We stood on the balcony, looking out at the stars, and he wrapped his arms around me. "We did it," he said softly. "Yes, we did," I replied, leaning into him, "and I couldn't have done it without you." Derek smiled, pressing a kiss to my forehead. I'm sorry it took me so long to see what was happening, but I'm glad we made it through together. So am I said, feeling a sense of contentment I hadn't felt in a long time. We stood there in silence for a while, just enjoying the moment before Derek spoke again. By the way, he said with a mischievous grin, I overheard Fiona talking to your mum earlier. Apparently they're planning some sort of surprise for us. I raised an eyebrow. A surprise? What kind of surprise? Derek shrugged. No idea. But whatever it is, I'm sure it's going to be interesting. And he was right. As it turned out, Fiona and my mum had planned a surprise honeymoon for us, an all-expenses-paid trip to a beautiful, secluded island. It was their way of saying thank you for everything we had been through and for standing up for our love. The trip was everything we could have hoped for and more. It was a chance for us to relax, unwind, and start our new life together without any of the drama that had plagued us in the months leading up to the wedding. And as we lay on the beach, watching the waves crash against the shore, I couldn't help but feel grateful for everything, the challenges, the struggles, the love, and the support. It had all led us to this moment, and I knew that we were stronger and more united than ever before. As we prepared to return home, ready to face whatever the future had in store, I felt a sense of peace. We had won the war, but more importantly, we had built a foundation for a life filled with love, respect, and partnership. And in the end, that was all that really mattered.